Look, if you're watching this right now, I need a favor. We're pushing hard to hit 1,000 subscribers, and honestly, your support means everything. Hit that subscribe button, smash the notification bell, and let's build this community together. Every single subscription gets us closer to that goal, and I promise to keep bringing you the raw, unfiltered truth about what's really happening in the NFL. Now, let's talk about what just went down in Cleveland, because this situation is absolutely nuclear. Tuesday evening, things completely fell apart at the Browns practice facility, and what happened next might be the most shocking internal sabotage we've seen from an NFL coaching staff in years. This isn't just your typical quarterback competition drama. This is career-ending betrayal, organizational warfare, and a franchise potentially imploding before the season even starts. So here's what allegedly happened. Practice is wrapping up Tuesday afternoon, and tensions are already running high. Dillon Gabriel is out there working with the second team defense, and he's having trouble. Routes aren't connecting, timing is off, and apparently Shedeur Sanders is on the sideline watching all of this unfold. According to multiple sources, Sanders starts making comments loud enough for people to hear about Gabriel's execution quality. Not subtle comments either. We're talking about audible criticism that the coaching staff absolutely noticed but chose to ignore in the moment. That's mistake number one right there. The practice ends, everyone heads back to the locker room, and that's when everything explodes. We're talking raised voices, accusations flying back and forth, teammates literally scrambling to prevent this from turning into an actual physical confrontation. Veterans had to step in and separate these two before fists started flying. The damage was done though. Whatever foundation this team had, whatever chemistry they were building, it shattered in that locker room. But here's where this story takes an absolutely wild turn that nobody saw coming. Standard protocol in the NFL when something like this happens is crystal clear. You handle it internally, you have private conversations, you present a unified front to the media, and you absolutely do not air your dirty laundry in public. That's how every professional organization operates. Except within 90 minutes of this locker room blow-up, detailed accounts of exactly what happened started appearing across every major national media platform simultaneously. We're not talking about vague reports or anonymous whispers. We're talking specific dialogue exchanges, matching timelines, identical information, hitting multiple reporters at the exact same time. This wasn't some organic leak where information trickled out through various channels. This was coordinated, deliberate, and came from a single source with intimate knowledge of what happened. League executives recognized the fingerprints immediately. The leak came from inside the coaching staff itself, and according to multiple team insiders, Kevin Stefanski personally authorized the release of this information. Let that sink in for a second. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns allegedly leaked details of a private locker room conflict to the national media. But before you think this was just some impulsive decision or a moment of poor judgment, you need to understand what's really going on here. According to people close to the situation, this wasn't an accident or an indiscretion. This was a calculated strategic move designed to achieve specific objectives. Stefanski has apparently been exhausted trying to manage owner Jimmy Haslam's relentless promotion of Sanders despite the coaching staff's clear preference for Gabriel. The leak represents a desperate attempt to shift the public narrative, expose the organizational dysfunction, and force the front office to intervene. Stefanski is basically wagering his entire professional reputation on this nuclear option because every traditional approach he's tried has failed completely. He's burning bridges while simultaneously lighting distress flares. This is a head coach's final stand when he's been backed into an impossible corner with nowhere else to turn. Think about how desperate you have to be to make a decision like this. We're talking about violating one of the most sacred principles in professional sports, the idea that what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. The immediate fallout was absolutely spectacular. Social media platforms erupted within hours. Twitter transformed into a Cleveland Browns dysfunction festival. Hashtags like Browns locker room leak, Stefanski out, and QB chaos were trending nationally, accumulating millions of impressions. NFL fans were mercilessly mocking the organization, creating memes with Stefanski as a leaking faucet, Sanders and Gabriel as kindergarten kids fighting over a toy, and Haslam as a confused puppet master pulling strings in the wrong direction. The discourse got vicious fast, and it perfectly mirrored the broader organizational catastrophe. For the Cleveland community, the significance of this cannot be overstated. These are supporters who have endured literal decades of quarterback disappointment, coaching carousel dysfunction, and ownership interference disasters. Their patience isn't just wearing thin anymore, it's completely evaporated. Their frustration is boiling over because they're watching another potentially promising season get sacrificed before any meaningful competition even begins. This is a fan base that has been through everything, and somehow it just keeps getting worse. Veteran players inside that locker room were reportedly stunned when they discovered that details of their private conflict had been published nationally. One defensive captain supposedly told local journalists that what happens in the locker room is supposed to stay in the locker room, and the fact that this got out tells you everything you need to know about the current state of this team. Multiple offensive linemen allegedly approached team leadership demanding accountability about who leaked this information and why. That invisible currency of locker room trust that sustains every successful organization, once it's compromised, restoration becomes nearly impossible. Stefanski allegedly destroyed decades of established protocol for short-term strategic advantage. That calculation reveals a level of desperation that transcends professional judgment. When you examine the media reaction, you see universal condemnation from pretty much every corner. ESPN analysts immediately questioned Stefanski's leadership credibility. One prominent commentator stated bluntly during a live broadcast that if this leak really came from Stefanski's side, it's the end of trust with Shedeur Sanders, because a quarterback can't lead if his coach is sabotaging him off the field. Former NFL players expressed complete disbelief about this apparent coaching staff betrayal. NFL Network personalities dissected the decision endlessly, comparing this situation to some of the worst coaching disasters in league history. The consensus emerged rapidly, and it was brutal. Stefanski committed professional suicide by targeting his own quarterback publicly. But here's where the narrative gets more complicated, because some league insiders are privately sympathetic to Stefanski's impossible position. Sources claim he's been navigating unprecedented ownership interference since draft night. Haslam allegedly mandated that Sanders receive a legitimate starting opportunity despite the coaching staff's comprehensive evaluation that favored Gabriel. The traditional organizational hierarchy has been completely inverted. Coaches have lost personnel authority. The front office has been undermined publicly. Stefanski supposedly attempted diplomatic approaches for months, requesting private meetings, proposing compromise solutions, establishing clear communication protocols. Everything was rejected. The nuclear option represented the only remaining leverage he had left. Now consider Sanders' perspective in all of this, because this situation threatens to derail what could be a promising NFL career before it even properly begins. He arrived in Cleveland expecting fair competition, a professional environment, and organizational support. Instead, he encountered a hostile coaching staff, preferential treatment toward his competitor, and organizational dysfunction everywhere he looked. Now his own head coach has allegedly weaponized a private conflict for political advantage. Sources suggest Sanders is privately devastated, feeling betrayed beyond typical coaching disagreements. Someone close to Sanders supposedly stated that Shedeur came to Cleveland to win, to prove doubters wrong, to establish himself as a franchise quarterback, and instead he's dealing with high school drama from people who should absolutely know better. The performance implications of all this cannot be ignored either. Both quarterbacks demonstrated legitimate NFL capabilities throughout training camp and the preseason. Gabriel's technical proficiency is legitimately impressive. His footwork is refined, his processing speed has accelerated, and his command of the offensive system is comprehensive. His completion percentage against the starting defense consistently exceeded 70%. The coaching staff appreciates his preparation, his discipline, his communication, his consistency, and his football intelligence. These qualities explain their strong preference despite ownership's contrary directive. Sanders has similarly showcased undeniable talent that transcends draft position expectations. His arm strength is exceptional, generating velocity that seems effortless. His deep ball accuracy is particularly impressive, threading passes into tight windows against aggressive coverage. While he occasionally struggles with protection adjustments, his improvisational ability creates explosive plays from structured chaos. Perhaps most impressive is his composure under intense scrutiny. Many talented prospects crumble when facing this level of organizational dysfunction. Sanders has maintained remarkable focus, delivering exceptional practice performances despite the surrounding catastrophe. That psychological fortitude is what separates media creations from genuine franchise cornerstones. Yet all that talent becomes completely irrelevant amid organizational implosion. This leaked locker room conflict fundamentally alters the quarterback development trajectory for both players. Sanders is reportedly questioning whether Cleveland even represents a viable long-term destination for his career. His camp is allegedly exploring options, discreetly evaluating potential trade scenarios, and assessing organizational stability across the league. NFL insiders are whispering that this situation may prove unsustainable, with multiple sources suggesting Sanders could push for relocation if circumstances don't improve dramatically and quickly. The Browns are potentially squandering generational talent through catastrophic mismanagement before the relationship even truly begins. This is the kind of organizational failure that sets franchises back years. Don't overlook the broader implications here either, because this situation is reshaping coaching ethics discussions across the entire league. Suddenly, every organization is examining their locker room confidentiality protocols, their media leak prevention strategies, and their internal conflict resolution procedures. Every head coach in the NFL is privately questioning whether Stefanski crossed an inviolable boundary. Every front office is evaluating what the appropriate response should be when coaches weaponize private information publicly. Players Association representatives are reportedly monitoring this situation intensely, considering whether league intervention becomes necessary to protect player interests. This isn't just about the Browns anymore. This has implications for how every team operates moving forward. Fan reaction reveals a fascinating division within Cleveland's supporter base. Gabriel supporters are defending Stefanski's decision, arguing that Sanders' entitled attitude necessitated public exposure. They emphasize Gabriel's superior preparation, his system mastery, and his professional demeanor. Sanders' defenders are condemning Stefanski's betrayal, highlighting the coaching staff's obvious bias, the organizational dysfunction, and the unprofessional conduct. The discourse has become toxic, reflecting broader cultural divisions that transcend football itself. Cleveland's fan base is fracturing irreparably, mirroring the locker room division, the organizational chaos, and what looks like complete competitive collapse. Let's address the ownership response here, because Jimmy Haslam's silence speaks absolute volumes. Sources claim he's privately furious about the leak, viewing it as a direct challenge to his authority. This situation supposedly exposes years of tension between football operations, autonomy versus ownership involvement philosophy. Haslam represents the hands-on ownership approach, personally investing in decisions and eliminating traditional boundaries. Stefanski embodies the traditional football hierarchy where coaches evaluate talent, determine playing time, and establish consequences. These incompatible philosophies have finally erupted publicly through this catastrophic leak, revealing organizational dysfunction that nobody can ignore anymore. General Manager Andrew Berry is positioned impossibly between these competing interests. He's allegedly advocated for compromise solutions unsuccessfully for months. Now facing this nuclear fallout, Berry must navigate an impossible political landscape while trying to maintain any organizational credibility whatsoever. Sources suggest Berry privately supports Sanders, but publicly defends coaching authority. This delicate balance is becoming unsustainable rapidly. League executives are observing this situation intensely, questioning Berry's ability to manage these unprecedented circumstances while preserving competitive relevance beyond the immediate crisis. When you examine the long-term ramifications, you see potentially catastrophic consequences emerging. Free agents are reportedly reconsidering Cleveland as a destination despite attractive financial incentives. Organizational instability is overshadowing roster talent, facility quality, market advantages, and everything else. Multiple agents are allegedly advising their clients to avoid the Browns until these leadership questions get resolved satisfactorily. The franchise reputation has been damaged irreparably through a single catastrophic decision that exposed years of accumulated dysfunction. All that current roster talent is potentially being wasted through organizational incompetence. There's a championship-caliber defense that was constructed painstakingly through draft investments, free agent acquisitions, and scheme innovations. Offensive weapons were assembled strategically. Infrastructure supporting immediate success was put in place. Instead, this quarterback controversy threatens to derail everything before meaningful competition even begins. Defensive players are privately expressing frustration about offensive dysfunction, distracting from preparation. Offensive linemen are caught between competing quarterback loyalties. Special teams units are observing this chaos nervously. Meanwhile, divisional opponents are absolutely salivating over Cleveland's vulnerability. Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh Pittsburgh defensive coordinators are studying the Browns situation closely, recognizing the competitive advantage this gives them. They'll exploit this organizational dysfunction relentlessly, applying additional pressure and targeting the apparent leadership vacuum. Anticipate divisional games becoming particularly challenging as opponents leverage Cleveland's internal chaos for strategic benefit. The media machinery is operating relentlessly right now, dissecting every single development obsessively. National analysts are descending upon Cleveland seeking additional drama. Local reporters are cultivating conflicting sources. Former players are offering uninformed opinions constantly. Suddenly, every Browns practice attracts disproportionate national attention. Twitter overflows with speculation hourly. YouTube creators are analyzing body language frame by frame. Reddit discussions dissect practice footage obsessively. TikTok videos mock the organizational dysfunction creatively. An entire ecosystem now orbits the Browns quarterback controversy, feeding on the dysfunction, amplifying the chaos, and generating engagement through catastrophe. It's a perfect storm of modern sports media culture colliding with organizational failure. When you consider potential resolutions, the situation demands immediate intervention, but every option carries significant consequences. Scenario 1. Stefanski gets terminated immediately, which restores locker room trust while sacrificing coaching continuity. Scenario 2. Sanders gets traded elsewhere, which eliminates the controversy while admitting catastrophic talent evaluation failure. Scenario 3. Haslam sells the franchise, removing ownership interference and enabling a fresh organizational start. None of these represent ideal outcomes. Each one carries significant consequences that could potentially affect multiple seasons moving forward. The ultimate question everyone's asking is whether this organization can even recover at this point. Training camp has concluded. The regular season is approaching relentlessly. Roster talent remains impressive theoretically, but organizational dysfunction overshadows absolutely everything right now. Without clear decision-making hierarchies, without respected boundaries, without consistent messaging, talent becomes irrelevant amid chaos. League history demonstrates repeatedly that organizational alignment is what separates perennial contenders from perpetual disappointments. For anyone paying attention, Cleveland's situation represents a cautionary tale about leadership integrity. Stefanski's alleged leak violated sacred trust between coaches and players. Regardless of his motivations, regardless of ownership interference, regardless of impossible circumstances, weaponizing private information publicly represents an unforgivable betrayal in many people's eyes. Locker room confidentiality sustains professional football's operational foundation. Once that's been compromised, restoration becomes nearly impossible. Moving forward requires painful decisions that will potentially alienate everyone involved. Someone must establish organizational control before there's any hope of salvaging competitive possibilities. Whether Haslam acknowledges the dysfunction or ignores the warning signs, whether Stefanski survives his professional suicide attempt or faces termination, whether Sanders remains or demands a trade, Cleveland's quarterback controversy represents something far beyond a typical position battle. This embodies complete organizational failure requiring comprehensive intervention before competitive possibilities vanish completely. One devastated fan posted across social platforms that they're not just losing games, they're losing Shedeur Sanders. And if Stefanski really leaked this information, he should be fired today. That sentiment captures Cleveland's current reality perfectly. Another promising season is potentially being sacrificed upon the altar of dysfunction. Another talented roster is being wasted through organizational incompetence. Another coaching staff is imploding spectacularly. Another ownership regime is demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of football operations. The question now is whether this organization can recover at all. Will professional football witness another wasted Cleveland season? Previous organizations facing comparable dysfunction eventually fired everyone, reset completely, and began another rebuild from scratch. The Browns desperately require stability, alignment, and unified messaging. Instead, they've chosen chaos, betrayal, and public warfare. This isn't merely unfortunate, it's potentially catastrophic for a franchise competing within a division featuring Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and multiple contending rosters. Make absolutely no mistake about it, the Cleveland Browns have already damaged their competitive possibilities through mismanagement that transcends quarterback development toward complete organizational dysfunction. This leaked locker room clash represents a symptom, not the actual disease. Years of accumulated tension between ownership interference and coaching autonomy have finally exploded publicly, revealing dysfunction that everyone suspected but nobody could prove definitively until now. You need to stay vigilant because this narrative is just beginning, not reaching its conclusion. The regular season is approaching amid unprecedented circumstances. Kevin Stefanski has allegedly crossed an inviolable boundary. Shedeur Sanders is reportedly considering exit options. Dillon Gabriel is caught impossibly between organizational warfare. Jimmy Haslam's silence is revealing. Andrew Barry's position has become untenable. The locker room is fractured irreparably. The fan base is divided viciously. The media feeding frenzy is intensifying daily. Professional football organizations require clear hierarchies, defined responsibilities, consistent messaging, and sacred trust between coaches and players. Cleveland is demonstrating the complete opposite of all of that. There's ownership interference, coaching desperation, leaked confidences, player conflict, and public warfare. The entire league is watching another potentially talented roster get sacrificed spectacularly. This season was supposedly going to feature the Browns' resurgence, defensive dominance, offensive innovation, and legitimate playoff possibilities. Then this alleged coaching leak shattered expectations, exposed dysfunction, and destroyed trust in ways that might be irreparable. Realistically speaking, this transcends quarterbacking and becomes an organizational identity crisis. Winning demands more than talented rosters. Success requires alignment, purpose, leadership, understanding boundaries, respecting processes, establishing sustainable culture, and maintaining that sacred trust. The Cleveland Browns currently represent a cautionary example of what happens when these fundamentals collapse catastrophically through a single devastating decision. If these descriptions sound dramatic, good, because they should. Cleveland's quarterback controversy just transformed from an internal competition into a public relations catastrophe, an organizational implosion, and a potential franchise-altering disaster. All of it allegedly orchestrated through their head coach's calculated leak that violated sacred locker room confidentiality. This isn't merely unusual, this is potentially devastating for everyone involved moving forward. The Browns are facing a reckoning. Stefanski is facing consequences. Sanders is facing a major career decision. Gabriel is facing uncertainty about his future. Haslam is facing serious accountability questions. The entire organization is facing an existential crisis before any meaningful competition has even begun. Where this goes from here is anyone's guess, but one thing is absolutely certain. The Cleveland Browns have created a mess that won't be easily cleaned up, and the ramifications of this decision will be felt for years to come, regardless of how they try to resolve it.